The key is to first identify what's sort of the behavior that you're already doing consistently in your day, and then what's a really tiny, small bit of movement that I could link to that. It's important to, I think, keep the behavior really simple so it doesn't feel like it has to take a lot of time or motivation, but it is something that you can sort of integrate into your natural workflow and routine.
Increasing your movement at work may be easier than you imagined. Associate professors in Kansas State University School of Health Sciences, Gina Besenyi and Emily Mailey, recently shared tips and tricks to energize the workday with participants in this year's Walk Kansas. On today's Sound Living, incorporating movement and nature for focus and vitality. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Mailey is the director of K-State's Physical Activity Intervention Research Lab, and Besenyi is the director of K-State's Physical Activity and Community Settings Lab. A few years ago, Besenyi worked on a national panel that put together all of the evidence of what spending time in nature and being physically active in nature can do to improve physiological, psychological, cognitive, and social health and well-being.
Being physically active, we know it's good for us and good for our bodies, and so we have a lot of physiological benefits from that. But above and beyond physical activity, just spending time in nature in and of itself can help lower your blood pressure, your heart rate, can activate your immune system, your parasympathetic, sympathetic nerve activity. It can improve your metabolism. So even if you're not being active in nature, just spending time in nature, just going outside and taking a break or reading a book or sitting in the grass, right, is going to have some really cool benefits. And obviously, long term, we find that people that spend more time in nature tend to be more physically active. So if you're at home and you're sitting on the couch and you're like, oh, I'm going to go outside and maybe read a book, even though that might be a more sedentary activity, the act of getting up and going outside is getting you more physical activity than if you never left the house at all. And so over time, we see a decreased risk and prevalence of things like obesity, asthma, stroke, diabetes, mortality, all the things, right? And one of the ways that this operates is because we have this soft fascination happening. We're able to sort of restore what's going on in our mind. We're able to reduce some of the stress and anxiety or rumination and worrying that we have in our day-to-day lives. And it can improve our mood, our energy, our ability to relax, and it can improve our self-esteem. We also know that it's important for brain development and cognitive benefits across all age groups, but we can especially think about this like in kids and how we need to not just have recess, but we need to get them outside for recess, right? And we know that taking that break and getting them outside can help things like test performance, academic performance. It can help you remember better and have better attention. They've also had some studies in older adults as well with cognition and memory issues. So it's beneficial no matter what age you are. The reason that I really think it's cool is because when you're working with people and we're trying to promote exercise, sometimes people have a negative connotation of that word. But when you ask someone to get up and go outside, sometimes they don't think of it as like sweating and at the gym or doing something that maybe they don't feel comfortable doing. It's like, oh, let's go out and play. Let's go out for a walk. Let's go do something that maybe is more enjoyable. So we see that those folks that spend more time outside have greater enjoyment of the activities that they're doing, which is really important if we want long-term behavior change, because you want to look forward to it, not dread it. And so people go outside to be more active. We see that improve long-term adherence to that behavior. And then finally, we are social creatures. One of the strongest ties to our mortality is our social networks and those influences. And being outside helps us to have better social cohesion and social support. We know our community members, we meet them, we greet them, and we have that sense of connection. And so because nature and being outside can facilitate that, we see all those benefits with socialization as well. So what's the problem? All this great opportunity to have health benefits from spending time in nature, but we really don't do a great job of it. We go to work, we drive to work, we sit at a screen all day, we spend a lot of sedentary time. So 93% of our lives for the average American ends up being inside, whether we're indoors or whether we're driving, which means that 7% of our life is able to spend outside reaping those benefits. That's a really small percentage that we think we could do a lot better job of improving that and increasing that time. So I'm going to hand it back to Emily to start talking about how to start integrating in some of this physical activity and great things we've been talking about.
In terms of the how, if you're at a point now where you do find yourself kind of spending your whole workday sitting, We'd encourage you to think about starting small. So don't start with how can I revamp my entire life? But a good place to start is just thinking about how can I sit a little bit less and break up my sedentary time throughout the workday. A good focus here is on taking short, frequent breaks to interrupt sitting. There's some interesting research about the physiological impact of just standing and sort of activating those major muscle groups. You reactivate some of the blood flow to your muscles and brain, even if you're just standing for a minute. So you might think about how can you combine movement with things that you already have to do at work or at home. Perhaps we have some people who are working from home, so we'll try to integrate a few examples related to both the office and home environment. But you might think about if you have to print something, can your office have the printer centrally located so that you have to get up and pick it up? If you have to ask a quick question to a colleague, can you walk down the hall instead of emailing them? At home, I know during COVID when I was working from home, laundry was a great excuse to, get up every hour and feel like I was being productive while I was getting up and moving around a little bit. Another small strategy that we've had people talk about in some of our research is making sure they're drinking enough water and using a smaller cup. We have a lot of awesome 40-ounce jugs now that people use that you don't have to refill very often, but a simple change like using a smaller cup forced people to get up and move more, and of course have to get up and use the restroom if they were drinking more water throughout the day. As you think about your daily routine, you can maybe think about what are some small changes I could make to things that I sort of already do as part of my day that would just add a little bit of movement. So you've probably heard the idea of parking farther away, whether you're running errands or going to work, not choosing the closest spot. I know before they demolished the natatorium, which was the former building where our offices were, I would frequently use the restroom that was, a couple floors down just to get some activity and use the stairs throughout the day. If you're someone who has to talk on the phone at work or does that in your leisure time, that's a good opportunity to stand up and move around. If you're someone who easily gets absorbed in what you're doing and sort of loses track of time, you might consider using different reminders or prompts to get up and move, like a smartwatch that registers if you've been sitting for long and reminds you. That's a great example. A different approach to this is the idea of tiny habits. You link the little bits of activity to things that you're already doing in your routine. The key is to first identify what's sort of the behavior that you're already doing consistently in your day, and then what's a really tiny small bit of movement that I could link to that. So after I send an email, I will stand up and stretch. After I feel like I'm starting to lose focus and drifting onto non-work related websites, I'm going to get up and do a few jumping jacks. So it's important to, I think, keep the behavior really simple so it doesn't feel like it has to take a lot of time or motivation, but it is something that you can sort of integrate into your natural workflow and routine. If you have sort of conquered some of the goals related to sitting less, then you might think about shifting some of your goals towards increasing physical activity. So maybe your initial tiny habit or goal was just to stand up, but you want to work towards actually stepping outside and taking a quick 5 or 10 minute walk around the block. Depending on your work environment, you may be able to keep a few dumbbells or some small equipment nearby so that you can do those exercises at your workspace. Perhaps you have your camera off and you can be marching in place or continuing to do some of the exercises. I know I get excited when I have a Zoom meeting where I don't have to have my camera on, and usually look at that as an opportunity to integrate some movement into my workday. And of course, we encourage you to try to choose activities you enjoy. If going to the gym or running or something gives you a sense of dread, don't do those things. Think about the types of things that you would look forward to and prioritize those. In terms of choosing the right activities, these are sort of the boxes that we're looking to fill. So as you brainstorm, what are some of the ways that I could be active, things that you feel capable of doing, things that make you feel good. So after you do the activity, you feel better. Things that you look forward to doing, again, that's linked to enjoyment typically, and things that are feasible to fit into your daily life. If 30 or 60-minute blocks of time are not feasible, you can think in terms of doing something for 3 or 5 minutes here and there throughout the day, and all of those minutes build up and don't feel like they're cutting into all the other responsibilities that you have. So I'll briefly share just a couple other strategies for people who are ready to maybe set some specific goals related to physical activity. These are some of the things that can help. I'm sure you're familiar with goal setting, and I'm sure that you occasionally set goals or think about things that you want to achieve in your life. For physical activity, we encourage people to be as specific as possible with their goals. So not only thinking about what I want to do, but doing some planning around maybe when and where I will do that. I always encourage people to focus on what we call process goals. So rather than having an outcome goal like, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next 2 months, focus on what are the actions or behaviors that are under my control. So I want to go for a walk over my lunch break every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that type of thing. Make sure goals are achievable. So I, again, encourage people to start small because you can always build up from there, but you want to accumulate some of those successes and feel good about your progress and view it as an experiment. So if your initial goal is too easy or too hard, you can always adjust it and sort of evaluate what's the right fit for you. Beyond goal setting, if you've identified something that you want to do, this is called action planning, where you're sort of actively planning it into your calendar. So if my goal was to walk for 20 minutes 3 times this week, this type of activity helps me plan out exactly when that's going to fit into my week. We know we're going to encounter barriers and challenges that are going to interfere with even the best laid plans that we've set, such as not having enough time, maybe feeling unmotivated, or forgetting to take breaks, which are probably things that most of us can relate to. So the key is not to eliminate these barriers, but to try to anticipate and have some plans in place for what are some strategies that I can try to overcome these challenges when they arise. And also just want to acknowledge that these ups and downs are sort of a normal part of the process. So we want to stay away from all or none thinking where it's like, if I didn't do my plan perfectly this week, then I failed. Just acknowledge that things won't always go as planned, but we can use these opportunities to say, maybe I need to try something different or come up with a new backup plan so that I can put myself in a position to be as successful as possible with achieving my goals. And then specific to the workplace, I have some examples of policies that have been found to support movement during the workday. So things like allowing people to wear comfortable shoes, allowing some flexibility in work hours so that people can fit activity into their day. If you have meetings, making it the norm for people to stand up. I know in kinesiology, we're always sort of standing up and milling about during our meetings, but other times that's not the norm and people feel weird about doing that. So if you're in a position where you're able to help create or enforce some of these types of policies, that's going to have benefits for everybody in the workplace. In terms of as you as an individual, as I said, you can think about little things like going down the hall to ask questions. If you're going to walk and grab a coffee or get lunch, you can invite others to join you. Maybe you invite a coworker to join you on some of your scheduled walking breaks throughout the day. These are the things that provide some accountability and make movement more enjoyable during the workday.
That's Emily Mailey, Director of K-State's Physical Activity Intervention Research Lab, and Gina Besenyi, Director of K-State's Physical Activity and Community Settings Lab, with information on the health benefits of movement and spending time in nature. Archived webinars are available on the Walk Kansas website, walkkansas.org. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.